Devotees, Hare Krishna. We will read for roughly half an hour Srila Prabhupada-lilamrita. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadishtarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchkalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha. Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So devotees, we are in London. And George Harrison has just become a devotee. A devotee, yes. He's become a devotee. And very helpful. And the devotees have just recorded the Hare Krishna mantra record, which was very popular in New Zealand, because in those days, that was, I think, 69 sometime. I knew nothing really about Krishna consciousness at all. But I knew, everybody, all the young people, every single last one, they knew that the Beatles had been to India. They're into meditation. Yeah. And Hare Krishna, well, anyway, then this record got produced. And in New Zealand, I don't know if it was top of the hit parade, but it was well up. Very, very popular. In England, we just read, I think yesterday, did we? Oh, maybe we did. I think it got up to the 12th place. And yeah, all over, it was a big thing. And in New Zealand, it was a big thing. And that's where I heard Hare Krishna first, from that record. And a number of my friends they really liked it. Really liked it. So anyway, they've just produced the record. And George has promised, this is going to be big. Okay, so we continue on. As the record went into production, the devotees returned to their regular work, still living separately. They're still living separately. Prabhupada set the time of his arrival for early September. He would go to Hamburg and then come to London, he said, even if there was no temple. Miraculously, only 2 months before Prabhupada's arrival, things began to come together. Guru Das met a real estate agent with a building on Berry Place near the British Museum. The devotees could move in immediately. An ideal location, £41 a week. Hare Krishna, welcome. Betiye up. Right, so 41 £20 a week. And immediate occupancy. It was wonderful. Mukunda wrote Prabhupada asking him for money for the down payment. Prabhupada agreed. Shamsunda got a letter from George on Apple Corporation Limited stationery stating that Apple would guarantee payments if the devotees defaulted. Within a week, the devotees had a 5-story building in central London, really in central London. And that's where I joined. 3 years later? 3 years, yeah. 3 years and a few months. And what happened was, Apple gave a guarantee, but the devotees didn't want to use that because it would have just upset Apple and George. So they tried to pay the rent. They were paying the rent. But then a very extraordinary thing happened. The landlord, the owner, who the devotees were paying directly, face to face, not through an agent. The owner disappeared for a couple of years. He just could not be located, and the devotees couldn't pay the rent. Of course, they struggled. At the best of time, they struggled to pay the rent, but now it was just physically impossible. There was no one to pay the rent to. So what did they do? Take a guess. They took it as Krishna's mercy that we don't have to pay rent anymore. So they spent the rent. Then just shortly before I joined, the owner reappeared. And he wanted 3 years of rent on the spot. And the devotees just couldn't do it at all. What would it be? 40 times 150, so that's like 6,000. Is it? 40 times 150? Thousand. So it's plus or minus 6,000 pounds. And the devotee's income was not great at all. Book distribution had not started. Once book distribution started, then there was, not a lot. I was going out and distributing magazines in the beginning, right in the beginning. And I was collecting between 8 and 10 pounds a day, which is not a lot. And the top distributor was doing 20 pounds a day. And we're worshipping the deities, installed Radha Krishna deities, 6 offerings a day, 60 devotees living in the temple. It's not cheap. So we're always on the edge of bankruptcy. So what happened was that this man just appeared out of nowhere. Give me the money or move out tomorrow or next week. And so this one devotee, Prabhupada-lilamrita, he was Irish, but he joined in London. And he passed away maybe 10 years ago, several years. He was such a nice devotee. He was a very good friend of mine. And he wanted to come to South Africa, but of course he didn't make it. And he was a character. Whew. Nothing could stop him. Nothing could stop him. So, on the Sunday program, the next Sunday program, Prabhupada Prabhu got up. It's a temple room, what did I say? As big as this room, different shape, just narrower and longer. It was something like this, maybe. So there's, if you squeeze people in, you might get maybe not 100, but, a decent number of people. And he made an announcement to everyone that you got to donate, we got to pay however much money it was, so a few thousand on tomorrow, Monday, or else we got to move out, you got to help. And he collected all the money on the spot. Prabhupada, he was amazing. He was really amazing. And he had very close relationship with Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada, one of the first British devotees. And he was such a devotee. He was always so busy. He struggled to finish his rounds. And he'd come into our brahmachari room where I was staying. We were all staying, like 20 of us in a room. A third the size of this room at most, or less, probably less, quarter the size. And we were like sardines. At night we'd lie down on the floor directly with sleeping bags, but no mattresses, no pillows, nothing except a sleeping bag. And, everyone had like a meter or less, 2/3, 3/4 of a meter, and then was the next one, and the next one, and that's how it was. And every night, not every night, but quite regularly, you'd wake up with someone's lotus feet in your mouth. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, boy. It was really crowded. It was really, really crowded. Anyway. But Prabhupada would come in. Usually he'd come in late, like 10 o'clock, 10:30, and he'd have rounds to chant. So he would sit down in the corner, literally in the actual corner, just sitting cross-legged to chant his rounds. And as he's chanting, he'd doze off. And so, we would then go to sleep. And as we're going to sleep, he and we'd wake up in the morning. I tell you what, I'd wake up 3:30. He'd still be in the corner. Like, seriously, no kidding at all. No kidding. But he was such a sincere devotee. Yeah. He was he's the one who told the story. Remember, I told the story about Prabhupada sitting by the deities. A few days ago, I told that story. in Berry Place. And Prabhupada said, I've captured Krishna for you. Take him. Yeah. And he was with Prabhupada when Prabhupada was being driven to a program somewhere in fairly central London, maybe one of the Conway Hall programs, which are quite famous programs. And to get there, you drive past Buckingham Palace. And if you want, you can drive down the driveway right in front. I mean, within sort of 75 meters of the palace, and then turn in front of the palace and go around. So they did that. And one devotee who was there in the car with Prabhupada and Tribhuvanath Prabhu, he told Srila Prabhupada that Srila Prabhupada, one of the guards, one of the soldiers from Buckingham Palace, has become a devotee. One of these men who, with the big, the big black kind of furry hat type of thing, and red uniforms and all that. He's become a devotee, Srila Prabhupada. He's a very important man. Yeah. He's one of the guards of the palace. And Prabhupada, very nonchalant, Prabhupada said, and what about the Queen? Well, not yet. But the Queen has been in a whole arti ceremony, like 20-minute arti ceremony with kirtan, Hare Krishna kirtan. She's taken prasadam and met a number of devotees at functions at Buckingham Palace. Okay. And here, anyway, okay, yeah, let's go. So, as the record went into production, the devotees returned to their regular work. Oh no, okay. So now they've found, so within a week, the devotees had a 5-story building in central London. Yeah, 5 stories. 5 stories. But when the devotees went to live at their new centre on Berry Place, city officials said they did not have the proper housing permits. The red tape could take weeks, even months. Again, the devotees were without a place to live and worship together. Shamsunda, however, on faith that everything would work out, began constructing a temple room of California redwood in the building. Yeah, it was quite amazing, the interior. Amazing interior with Californian redwood. John Lennon then suggested to Shamsunda that the devotees come and live with him at Tittenhurst, a large estate he had recently purchased near Ascot. He needed some renovation done, and if the devotees would help, he would give them a place to live. Can our guru also stay there? Shamsunda asked. John agreed, and the devotees moved into the former servants' quarters at John's estate. Only a few weeks before Prabhupada's arrival, the record Hare Krishna Mantra was released. Apple Records staged a promotion and brought press reporters and photographers in a multicolored bus to a blue and white pavilion where the devotees had gathered with George. The first day, the record sold 70,000 copies. That's a lot. Within a few weeks, the devotees appeared on the popular TV show Top of the Pops, singing, quote unquote, their song. And the devotee probably says more as we read, but the devotees would sing in nightclubs, just real nightclubs, low class, just smoke and alcohol and just, really just like that. And the devotees would go and do Hare Krishna Kirtan, and the people would just sort of be astonished. John Lennon's estate, formerly owned by the Cadbury family, consisted of 76 acres of lawn and forest, with a large manor and many smaller buildings. John and his wife, Yoko, lived in the manor. The servants' quarters, where Prabhupada and the devotees were to live, were 4 separate apartments in a single narrow building near the manor. About 15 devotees moved in, reserving one apartment for Prabhupada and his servant. John wanted the devotees to tear out the hardwood walls and floor in the main house and replace them with new walls and black and white marble tile floors. While this renovation was going on, Ishan, who had recently arrived from Canada, began with a few helpers to convert the old music recital hall into a temple, complete with Vyasa-san for Srila Prabhupada. The devotees worked day and night on Prabhupada's quarters, the temple room, and Prabhupada's Vyasa-san. With such energy did they work that John and Yoko could see that the devotees were obviously in love with their spiritual master. When the devotees were making a tape to send to Prabhupada in Germany, Ishan asked John if he had anything he wanted to say to their guru. John smiled and said he would like to know Prabhupada's secret that made his followers so devoted. The stage was set. The time had come for the principal character to enter. Lord Krishna's pure devotee was at last coming to England. For the 6 devotees who had pioneered Krishna consciousness in London, it had been a long struggle, but now it seemed that all their once impossible dreams were coming true. They had found a place for Prabhupada to live in, and they'd obtained a temple in the center of London. This was Krishna's blessing. Okay, so I'm going to continue. That's the end of chapter 29. Chapter 30, London, a dream fulfilled. London, September 11th, 1969. With the cooperation of Apple Records and Lufthansa German Airlines, because Prabhupada was coming from Germany, the devotees arranged a reception for Prabhupada at London's Heathrow Airport. As soon as Prabhupada descended the stairs of the airplane, he was escorted to a car and driven to a VIP lounge, bypassing the formalities of immigration and customs. As Prabhupada stepped from the car, the devotees ran out of the terminal and offered obeisances on the wet pavement, while Srila Prabhupada looked down on them, smiling. The devotees rose, brushing wet tar seal from their dhotis and saris, and joyfully surrounded Prabhupada as he entered the lounge. inside the terminal, Prabhupada confronted a mass of reporters and cameramen and several dozen friends of the devotees. A clean cloth covered one of the lounge sofas, and vases with yellow gladioluses sat on either side. Prabhupada walked over to the sofa and sat down, and Shamsundar garlanded him with red and white carnations. Prabhupada began leading kirtan. The devotees were oblivious to all but Prabhupada, and the reporters resigned themselves to simply standing and observing while the devotees sang and danced ecstatically. The eager devotees were unabashed during the kirtan, and their shouts of Hari Bol and Jai Prabhupada, as well as blast from the conch shell, punctuated the regular chanting of Hare Krishna. After the kirtan, the reporters remained at a distance as Prabhupada spoke affectionately to almost each devotee seated before him. "Where is Janaki?" he asked. "Oh yes, how are you?" "Vibhavati, how's your daughter?" "Actually, you're all my fathers and mothers. You are taking such care." For the devotees, only they and Prabhupada were present in the lounge, and they strained to catch everything he did or said. They couldn't have cared less about any outsider's reaction. Finally, Mukunda invited the reporters to come forward. "If any of you gentlemen have any questions, you can ask them of Prabhupada." One of the reporters said, moving closer, "What do you think of this reception?" Prabhupada: "I'm not very much fond of reception. I want to know how people give reception to this movement. That is my concern." Devotees in unison, Hari Bol. Reporter: "Is this a very special welcome for you, or is this a performance you go through each day?" Prabhupada: "No, wherever I go, I have got my disciples. In Western countries, I've got now about 20 centers, especially in America. So the American boys are very enthusiastic. I think in Los Angeles and San Francisco, I got a very great reception. In the Rath Yatra festival, about 10,000 boys and girls followed me for 7 miles. Devotees, Hari Bol." Then a reporter from the Sun. The Sun's like a scandal newspaper in England. It's a real scandal paper. So a devotee from the Sun: "What do you try to teach, sir?" Prabhupada: "I'm trying to teach what you have forgotten." Devotees laughing, Hari Bol, Hare Krishna. Sun reporter, because what you've forgotten. So Sun reporter, which is what? Prabhupada: "That is God. Some of you are saying there's no God. Some of you are saying God is dead. And some of you are saying God is impersonal or void. These are all nonsense. I want to teach all the nonsense people that there is God. That is my mission. Any nonsense can come to me. I shall prove that there is God. That is my Krishna consciousness movement. It is a challenge to the atheistic people. This is God. As we're sitting here face to face, you can see God face to face. If you're sincere and if you're serious, that is possible. Unfortunately, you're trying to forget God. Therefore, you're embracing so many miseries of life. So I am simply preaching that you become Krishna conscious and be happy. Don't be swayed by these nonsense waves of Maya or illusion. When a reporter asked if the singing was, quote unquote, essential to the sustenance of your faith, Prabhupada answered at length, describing the cleansing effect of chanting Hare Krishna. He quoted Srimad Bhagavatam's declaration that anyone without Krishna consciousness has no good qualities. Test any of our students, Prabhupada said, how they are good, how they are advanced. Test it. Bring anyone in the world and compare with any one of our boys. You will find how much difference there is in their character and their feeling and their consciousness. If you want a peaceful society, then you must make people God conscious, Krishna conscious. Everything will be automatically resolved. Otherwise, your so-called United Nations will not help. The reporters asked about Billy Graham. You heard of Billy Graham? He was a Christian preacher. I think he's died. Yeah, but big Christian preacher. Billy Graham, the moon landing, the war in Ireland, and the whereabouts of Prabhupada's wife and children. They asked him to turn his head toward them, and they clicked away with their cameras. They thanked him, and the reception dispersed. Prabhupada went from the building to the gleaming white Rolls-Royce awaiting him outside, courtesy of John Lennon. Prabhupada entered the back seat and sat cross-legged. The limousine was equipped with darkened windows and a lavish interior, including a television. The devotees had become so confused in their excitement that none of them had thought to join Prabhupada, and the chauffeur whisked him away to Tittenhurst on his own. Prabhupada sat silently, except for his occasionally audible chanting, as the chauffeur headed through the winding roads leading away from the airport. He was in England. His father, Gormohan, had never wanted him to come to England. Once an uncle had told Gormohan that his son should go to England to become a barrister, but Gormohan said no. If his son went there, the meat-eaters, drinkers, and sex-mongers might influence him. But now, 70 years later, Prabhupada had indeed come to London, not to be influenced by the Englishmen, but to influence them. He had come to teach them what they had forgotten. And he was off to a good start, under Krishna's special care. When he'd had to live alone in New York City without any money, that had been Krishna's mercy. And now he was entering England in a chauffeured limousine, also Krishna's mercy. Accepting the ride as part of Krishna's plan, Prabhupada remained deeply fixed in his purchase of carrying out the order of his spiritual master, whatever circumstances awaited. As they turned onto Route 4, proceeding towards Slough, it's a city just outside London to the west. We have distributed books there many times. Prabhupada saw factories and warehouses, and then the flat countryside, with orchards, fields, and grazing horses. The grey, chilly weather hinted of winter ahead. After about 20 minutes, Prabhupada reached the wealthy neighborhood of Ascot, and soon appearing on the left, the high redwood fence surrounding the Lennon estate. Prabhupada had arrived before his disciples. But those who had remained at the manor excitedly received him and showed him to his room on the second floor of the servants' quarters. The small room was chilly and damp, with a low table for a desk and wall-to-wall carpeting made from pieces of rug taken from the other rooms. The adjoining room was bare and even smaller. Prabhupada sat down at his low desk. "Where is everyone?" he asked. As he leaned back and gazed out the window, he saw rain just beginning to fall. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Any comments or questions? Ganga Mata is not here. Oh, but Marie's here. Where's Ganga Mata? She's got service, is it? She's what? Oh, yes, of course. Okay, any comments, questions? Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Lakshminath Prabhu. Hare Krishna.